The mythology of ancient Greece represents one of the most influential and enduring bodies of religious and cultural narratives in human history, shaping not only the civilization that created these stories, but continuing to influence art, literature, philosophy, and popular culture thousands of years after the ancient Greeks first told these tales around fires and in temples and theaters across the Mediterranean world. Tonight, we will embark on a comprehensive journey through the complete pantheon of Greek gods and the heroes who walked among mortals, exploring their origins, their relationships, their domains of power, their legendary deeds, and the countless myths and stories that were told about them, beginning with the very creation of the cosmos, according to Greek understanding, and proceeding through generations of divine beings and mortal champions whose exploits became the foundations of Greek culture and identity. To understand Greek mythology, we must begin at the beginning with the primordial deities who emerged from the initial void or chaos that existed before creation. For the Greeks, like many ancient peoples, told stories about how the world came to be, and these cosmogonic myths formed the foundation upon which the later stories of gods and heroes were built. In the beginning, according to Greek mythology, there was chaos, which was not disorder, as the modern word suggests, but rather a vast empty void or gap, a primordial state of nothingness from which everything else would emerge. From chaos came the first divine beings, including Gaia, who was the earth herself, a fundamental deity representing the solid ground and the life-giving properties of the land. Gaia emerged self-created from chaos, and she in turn gave birth to Uranus, who was the sky, and together Gaia and Uranus would become the parents of the first generation of major deities. Also emerging from chaos were Erebus, who represented deep darkness, Nyx, who was the night Tartarus, who was the deepest, darkest pit beneath the earth that would later serve as a prison for divine beings, and Eros, who represented not romantic love, but rather the fundamental force of attraction and procreation that drives beings to come together and create new life. These primordial deities were not gods in the sense that the later Olympians would be, but rather were personifications of fundamental aspects of existence, and their interactions and offspring would populate the cosmos with increasingly anthropomorphic divine beings. Gaia and Uranus together produced many children, including the 12 Titans, who would be the dominant divine powers of the next generation. The Titans were Oceanus, who ruled the great world-encircling river, Coeus and Crius, and Hyperion and Iapetus, who were associated with various celestial and cosmic functions. Theia, who was associated with sight and the shining light of the clear blue sky. Rhea, who would become a mother goddess. Themis, who represented divine law and order. Mnemosyne, who was memory personified. Phoebe, who was associated with prophetic intellect. Tethys, who was a sea goddess. And most importantly for our story, Cronus, who was the youngest of the Titans and who would overthrow his father Uranus to become ruler of the cosmos during the age known as the Golden Age. In addition to the Titans, Gaia and Uranus produced other offspring, including the 3 Cyclopes, who were giant beings, each with a single eye in the middle of their foreheads, and they were master craftsmen who would later forge the thunderbolts of Zeus and other divine weapons. They also produced the 3 Hecatoncheiries, who were 100-handed giants of enormous strength. Uranus feared and hated these monstrous children and imprisoned them in Tartarus, the dark pit beneath the earth, causing great pain to Gaia, who felt their imprisonment within her body. In her anger and pain, Gaia fashioned a great sickle from adamant, which was an unbreakable divine metal, and she called upon her Titan children to help her take revenge on Uranus. Only Cronus was brave or ambitious enough to accept this mission, and when Uranus next came to lie with Gaia, Cronus took the sickle and castrated his father severing Uranus's genitals and casting them into the sea. From the blood that fell upon Gaia sprang forth the Erinyes, who were the Furies, representing vengeance, and the Giants, who were enormous warriors, and the Meliae, who were nymphs of the ash trees. From the severed genitals that fell into the sea and mixed with the foam came forth Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, born fully grown from the sea foam near the island of Cyprus. With Uranus castrated and unable to produce more children, Cronus took power as the new ruler of the cosmos, beginning the age of Titan dominance. Cronus took his sister Rhea as his wife, and together they ruled during what later Greeks would call the Golden Age, when life was supposedly easier and humans lived in harmony with nature and the gods. However, Cronus had learned from his parents Gaia and Uranus that he was fated to be overthrown by one of his own children, just as he had overthrown his father, and being fearful of this prophecy, he decided to prevent it by swallowing each child that Rhea bore. Rhea gave birth to 6 children, and Cronus swallowed the first 5 as soon as they were born, these being Hestia, who would be goddess of the hearth, Demeter, who would be goddess of agriculture, Hera, who would be queen of the gods, Hades, who would rule the underworld, and Poseidon, who would rule the seas. When Rhea became pregnant with her 6th child, she was determined to save this one, and she consulted with Gaia about how to trick Cronus. When the time came for the birth, Rhea traveled to Crete and gave birth to Zeus in a cave on Mount Dicte, or according to some versions, Mount Ida, and she hid the baby there to be raised by nymphs and the goat Amalthea, who nursed him. To deceive Cronus, Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and presented it to Cronus, who swallowed it, thinking it was the baby, and thus Zeus was saved. Zeus grew to maturity in hiding on Crete, and when he was ready, he returned to challenge his father. With the help of Metis, who was a Titaness representing wisdom and cunning, Zeus prepared a potion that would cause Cronus to vomit up the children he had swallowed. Zeus somehow caused Cronus to consume this potion, and Cronus vomited up first the stone which had been swallowed last, and then, in reverse order, Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, who emerged fully grown, since gods do not die even when imprisoned in another's stomach. These children of Cronus joined with Zeus in rebellion against the Titans, beginning a cosmic war that would be known as the Titanomachy, the war between the Olympians, as Zeus and his siblings were called from Mount Olympus, which became their home, and the Titans lasted for 10 years and shook the foundations of the cosmos. Zeus freed the Cyclopes from their imprisonment in Tartarus, and in gratitude they forged for him the thunderbolt, which became his signature weapon. For Poseidon, they made the trident, which could shake the earth and command the seas, and for Hades, they crafted a helmet of invisibility. Zeus also freed the Hecatoncheires, the 100-handed giants who joined the fight against the Titans with their immense strength. The battle raged across the world, with mountains shattered and seas boiling from the cosmic energies unleashed, until finally the Olympians prevailed. The defeated male Titans were imprisoned in Tartarus, guarded by the Hecatoncheires, though some of the Titanesses who had not fought against Zeus were spared. Atlas, who had been a prominent leader of the Titan forces, was given a special punishment of being forced to hold up the sky on his shoulders for eternity, standing at the western edge of the world. With their victory over the Titans, Zeus and his siblings divided the cosmos among themselves, with Zeus drawing the lot to rule the sky and become king of the gods, Poseidon drawing the lot to rule the seas, and Hades drawing the lot to rule the underworld and the realm of the dead. The earth and Olympus were considered common territory for all the gods. Thus began the reign of the Olympian gods, which would continue until the end of Greek paganism thousands of years later. The 12 major Olympian gods who were worshipped most prominently throughout the Greek world included Zeus and his siblings Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, and Hestia, though Hestia would later give up her seat among the 12 to Dionysus, plus the children of Zeus, including Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, who was in some accounts Zeus's daughter, though in others she was born from the sea foam, as we described, Hephaestus, and Hermes. Let us explore the figure of Zeus, one of the central deities of ancient Greek mythology. Zeus was regarded as the supreme ruler of the Olympian gods, and was associated with the sky, weather, thunder, lightning, law, order, and justice. His symbols included the thunderbolt, the eagle, and the oak tree. In Roman tradition, he was known as Jupiter. According to mythological belief, Zeus ruled from Mount Olympus, which was considered the sacred dwelling place of the gods. This location symbolized divine authority and cosmic order. Zeus was seen as the ultimate source of law among both gods and mortals, responsible for maintaining balance, enforcing agreements, and preserving justice throughout the world. Many ancient myths describe Zeus as a figure who shaped the structure of the cosmos and influenced the course of human history. He played a key role in stories about the formation of the Olympian order, the struggle against chaotic forces, and the establishment of stability after periods of conflict. These narratives were used by ancient cultures to explain natural phenomena, social rules, and moral values. Zeus also appeared in numerous legendary stories in which he interacted with gods, heroes, and mortals, often symbolizing divine intervention or the transfer of authority. These myths were not meant to be understood literally, but served as symbolic explanations for power, leadership, and responsibility. Another prominent Olympian deity was Hera, who represented marriage, family order, and social harmony. She was honored as a protector of tradition and stability within ancient Greek society. Hera was often portrayed as dignified and authoritative, reflecting the importance of order and continuity in both divine and human realms. Together, the myths surrounding Zeus and the Olympian gods formed the foundation of ancient Greek religious thought and influenced art, philosophy, and culture for centuries. A fearsome enemy. Many myths tell of Hera seeking vengeance against all those involved with Zeus. Various myths describe her sending serpents to kill the baby Heracles, or driving Heracles insane so that he would kill his own family. This act, born from her jealousy and pride, incited Heracles' 12 labors as penance to restore balance between mortals and immortals. She also persecuted Leto, causing her child Apollo to be born on a rocky island, far from everyone. Hera was a constant threat, even killing those who challenged her authority, as she did with Actaeon. She also helped start the Trojan War after being slighted by Aphrodite in a beauty contest, then allowed the city to be devastated and its women's lives ruined. Despite her jealousy, Hera was a powerful goddess in her own right, demanding loyalty, but also helping heroes who respected her properly. She was a friend to the Greeks in the Trojan War and assisted Jason in his quest for the Golden Fleece. Next, we have Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses. His symbols were the trident, the dolphin, and the horse, and his Roman equivalent was Neptune. He was one of 3 brothers who split the world among themselves, and he ruled all the seas from his palace under the ocean. He was strong enough to rival Zeus in power, though, as king, Zeus had the final say. Poseidon was often depicted like the fickle, violent sea itself, fluctuating between benevolent calm and sudden, stormy violence. He could create earthquakes by striking the ground with his trident, earning him the nickname Earth Shaker. Poseidon often competed with other gods to be the patron of cities. Most famously, he vied with Athena for control of Attica. Poseidon struck the Acropolis with his trident, creating a saltwater spring. Athena, in turn, offered the first olive tree, The Athenians chose Athena's gift, and she became their patron goddess. Poseidon fathered many children, including the hero Theseus and the cyclops Polyphemus, whose blinding by Odysseus earned the hero a 10-year detour home, courtesy of a vengeful Poseidon. He also fathered the winged horse Pegasus. Poseidon appears in many myths, supporting the Greeks during the Trojan War, but relentlessly pursuing those who angered him, like Odysseus and the Trojans. Finally, Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, grain, and the harvest. Her symbols were the pig, sheaves of wheat, and the torch. Her Roman equivalent was Ceres, from which we get the word cereal. Demeter was one of the original Olympians and was revered throughout Greece as the one who brought the harvest and taught humans how to grow crops. Demeter's most significant myth is the kidnapping of her daughter, Persephone, by Hades, the god of the underworld. In the story, Persephone, also known as Kore, was picking flowers when the earth suddenly opened up. Hades charged out in his chariot, seizing her and taking her to his throne room to be his queen. This act plunged Demeter into a deep grief that withered the earth, and the story of her search is one of the most famous in all of Greek mythology. This abduction was arranged with Zeus's permission, but without consulting Demeter, and when Demeter discovered her daughter was missing, she wandered the earth searching for her in great grief. During Demeter's mourning, she neglected her duties, and the earth became barren, with crops failing and famine threatening humanity. Finally, Zeus was forced to intervene and commanded Hades to return Persephone. But because Persephone had eaten pomegranate seeds while in the underworld, she was bound to spend part of each year there. The compromise reached was that Persephone would spend 2/3 or 3/4 of the year with Demeter on Olympus, and 1/3 or 1/4 with Hades in the underworld. This myth explained the seasons, with winter representing the months when Persephone was in the underworld, and Demeter mourned, causing the earth to be barren, and spring and summer representing Persephone's return, when Demeter rejoiced and the earth bloomed again. The Eleusinian mysteries, which were among the most important religious rites in ancient Greece, were based on this myth and promised initiates a better afterlife. Hestia was the goddess of the hearth, home, and domesticity, and her symbol was the hearth fire that burned in every home and temple. Her Roman equivalent was Vesta. Hestia was the eldest child of Cronus and Rhea, and thus the first to be swallowed and the last to be disgorged, making her both the eldest and youngest of the Olympians in a sense. She was a virgin goddess who rejected the advances of both Poseidon and Apollo and requested that Zeus let her remain unmarried forever, which he granted. Hestia tended the sacred fire on Mount Olympus, and her presence in every home hearth made her central to daily life and worship, even though she featured less prominently in myths than other Olympians. Hestia was eventually said to have given up her seat among the 12 Olympians to Dionysus in order to keep the peace and prevent conflict over the limited number of places, and she returned to tending the sacred hearth fire. Despite her low profile in mythology, Hestia was honored in every home and at the beginning and end of every sacrifice, showing her fundamental importance to Greek religious practice. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, strategic warfare, handicrafts, and various aspects of civilization, and her symbols included the owl, the olive tree, the snake, and the aegis, which was a shield or breastplate associated with Zeus and Athena. Her Roman equivalent was Minerva. Athena's birth was extraordinary as she sprang fully grown and fully armed from Zeus's forehead after Zeus had swallowed her mother Metis, who was pregnant at the time. Zeus had swallowed Metis because of a prophecy that she would bear a son who would overthrow him, but instead she gave birth to Athena inside Zeus, and Athena emerged from Zeus's head, which Hephaestus split open with an axe. Athena was a warrior goddess but not of the brute force kind. She embodied wisdom, strategy, and discipline in action. While Ares symbolized the unbridled desire for conflict, Athena represented intelligence, logic, and balance amidst chaos. Known as the patron goddess of Athens, one of the most powerful city-states of ancient Greece, she was associated with knowledge and social harmony. She frequently guided mythical heroes, offering them protection, insightful wisdom, and moral clarity at critical moments. Athena was also the patron of craftsmanship and artistic expression, particularly weaving. Such refined skill was she possessed that a famous legend recounts how a person who dared to challenge her art was transformed as a lesson in humility and respect toward the divine. Athena's influence extended to many great legends, particularly during the Trojan War, where she advocated careful planning and restraint instead of violence. Apollo, on the other hand, was the god of light, music, poetry, art, knowledge, healing, and prophecy. His symbols, the laurel tree and the bow, reflected his dual nature as a being who both brought harmony and wielded sensitivity. Apollo, known by the same name in Roman culture, represented order and intellectual refinement. Myths often portray him as a divine guide who established centers of prophecy and wisdom. The Oracle Center at Delphi became the heart of contemplation and foresight for both individuals and city-states seeking guidance. Stories of Apollo explored the balance between creativity and discipline, ambition and humility, human desire and the laws of nature. Through him, the Greeks expressed the tension between enlightenment and limitation, demonstrating that wisdom carries both power and responsibility. Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus, the smith god, but she had numerous relationships, most famously with Ares, the god of war as we mentioned, and with the mortal Anchises, with whom she had a son, Aeneas the Trojan hero, who would become the legendary founder of Rome, according to Roman mythology. Aphrodite possessed a magical girdle, or belt, that made whoever wore it irresistibly attractive, and she sometimes loaned this to other goddesses or mortals. Aphrodite played a crucial role in starting the Trojan War through the judgment of Paris, where the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite competed for the golden apple inscribed to the fairest, and each offered Paris a bribe, with Aphrodite promising him the most beautiful woman in the world, who was Helen of Sparta, and Paris chose Aphrodite and claimed Helen, even though she was married to Menelaus, thus triggering the war. Aphrodite protected Paris and the Trojans during the war, and saved Paris from death in his duel with Menelaus. Aphrodite could be petty and vengeful toward those who slighted her, including punishing Hippolytus, who scorned love, and Aphrodite by causing Hippolytus' stepmother Phaedra to fall in love with him, leading to tragedy. Hephaestus was the god of fire, metalworking, craftsmanship, and volcanoes, and his symbols included the hammer, the anvil, and the tongs. His Roman equivalent was Vulcan. Hephaestus was the son of Zeus and Hera, or in some versions born from Hera alone, and he was the only Olympian god who was physically imperfect, being lame or crippled. According to one version, Hera threw him from Olympus in disgust at his deformity, and he landed in the ocean, where he was raised by sea nymphs, while another version says Zeus threw him from Olympus for siding with Hera in an argument, and his leg was broken in the fall. Despite his disability, Hephaestus was the divine craftsman who created magnificent objects, including the palaces of the gods on Olympus, the armor and weapons of the gods, including Zeus's thunderbolts, Poseidon's trident, and Athena's aegis, the first woman Pandora who was fashioned from clay, the chains that bound Prometheus, and countless other marvels. Hephaestus had his forge beneath volcanoes, where he worked with the help of the Cyclopes, and his workshops were said to be beneath Mount Etna in Sicily. As mentioned earlier, Hephaestus was married to Aphrodite in an arranged marriage. and when he discovered her relationship with Ares, he crafted an invisible net that trapped them and revealed their betrayal to the other gods. Hephaestus was worshipped by craftsmen and smiths throughout Greece, especially in Athens, where his temple shared a space with Athena Usis. Hermes was the god of travelers, merchants, thieves, messengers, athletics, and the guide of souls to the underworld, and his symbols included the caduceus, which was a staff with two serpents wrapped around it, winged sandals, a winged cap, and the tortoise. The Roman god was Mercury. Hermes, the son of Zeus and Maia, invented the lyre by making it from a shell on the first day. When Apollo discovered the theft and confronted Hermes, the young god charmed Apollo with the lyre, and they traded cattle for it. Apollo took the musical instrument, and Hermes took the cattle. Zeus was impressed by Hermes' wit and made him the messenger of the gods. This role allowed him to utilize the speed advantage he possessed, thanks to wearing winged sandals that enabled him to fly. Hermes was a god of passage, associated with boundaries and transitions, travelers and thieves who crossed property limits, trade and barter, and the passage from life to death by guiding souls to the underworld. Hermes was also associated with luck and sudden gains, and was the protector of gamblers and merchants. He has been featured as a helper and guide in many myths, including guiding Perseus on his mission to kill Medusa, helping Odysseus escape Circe's spell, and rescuing Persephone from the underworld. Now, let's talk about Dionysus. He was the god of wine, revelry, theater, madness, and religious fervor, and his symbols included the grapevine, the thyrsus, a staff adorned with pine cones, the leopard, and ivy. His Roman counterpart was Bacchus. Dionysus was the son of Zeus and the mortal princess Semele, and his birth was an unusual event. Tricked by the jealous Hera, Semele asked Zeus to show her his true divine form. When Zeus did so, the image of his divine glory overwhelmed Semele, who was carrying the unborn Dionysus. Zeus rescued the infant Dionysus and protected him until he was ready to be born. Thus, Dionysus was born twice. Dionysus was secretly raised to protect him from Hera's jealousy, and in adulthood, he traveled the world promoting grape cultivation and winemaking. He was accompanied by maenads, ecstatic female worshippers, and satyrs, half human, half goat beings. Worship of Dionysus involved ecstatic rituals and the temporary abandonment of social norms and restrictions, and his festivals in Athens formed the origins of Greek theater. Dionysus could be benevolent, bringing joy and freedom through wine and celebration, but he could also be dangerous and furious toward those who rejected him. This is illustrated in the legend of Pentheus, king of Thebes, who opposed worship of Dionysus and was torn apart by maenads, including his own mother. The story of Dionysus reflects the ambivalence the Greeks felt towards states of intoxication and ecstasy, states that could free people from the constraints of daily life, but could also lead to violence and excess. Beyond the 12 great Olympian gods, Greek mythology featured numerous other gods and divine beings. These included Hades, Zeus's brother and ruler of the underworld, Persephone, queen of the underworld and goddess of spring growth, Aphrodite, in some accounts the wife or lover of Hephaestus, Eros, later in mythology the son of Aphrodite and god of romantic love, though, as we have already noted, he was originally a primordial god. Pan, the god of shepherds and flocks with goat legs and horns, Hecate, the goddess of magic, sorcery, and crossroads, Iris, the messenger goddess and personification of the rainbow, Eris, the goddess of discord and strife, Nemesis, the goddess of vengeance and punishment against the proud, Nike, the winged goddess of victory, the Muses, the 9 goddesses who presided over the arts and sciences, the Fates, the 3 goddesses who controlled fate and the lifespans of mortals, and countless other gods and divine beings. Greek mythology also included nymphs and minor goddesses associated with specific places or natural phenomena. The heroes of Greek mythology were mortals or demigods who accomplished extraordinary feats, and their stories became central to Greek cultural identity. Now, let's examine some of the most important heroes, starting with Perseus. Perseus was the son of Zeus and the mortal princess Danae, and his birth occurred after Danae's father, Acrisius, king of Argos, was told by an oracle that he would be killed by his daughter's son. So he locked Danae in a bronze chamber to prevent her from having children. However, Zeus appeared to her in a divine form, and Danae became Perseus's mother. When Acrisius found the baby Perseus, to avoid directly harming them and incurring divine wrath, he placed Danae and Perseus in a chest and threw it into the sea. The chest washed ashore on the island of Seriphos and was found by a fisherman named Dictys. Dictys raised Perseus. When Perseus grew up, the king of Seriphos desired Danae and wanted to get rid of him, so he sent Perseus on a seemingly impossible mission to retrieve the head of the Gorgon Medusa. The Gorgons were 3 monstrous sisters with hair of snakes and faces so terrifying that anyone who looked at them turned to stone, and Medusa was the only mortal among them. Perseus received help from the gods. Athena gave him a polished shield, Hermes winged sandals and a sickle, and Hades a helmet of invisibility. Perseus first sought out the Graeae, 3 old women who shared a single eye and a single tooth, and stole their eye to force them to tell him where to find the Gorgons. He then flew to the Gorgons' lair, and while they slept, used his polished shield as a mirror so he could see Medusa without looking directly at her, and finally brought about her end. The winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor were born. Perseus placed Medusa's head in a sack and flew away, stopping in Ethiopia on his return journey. There he saw Princess Andromeda, chained to a rock as a sacrifice to a sea monster sent by Poseidon. Perseus fell in love with Andromeda and bargained with her family for marriage if he rescued her. He then used Medusa's head to turn the sea monster to stone. Perseus married Andromeda and returned to Seriphos, where he used Medusa's head to turn the king who threatened his mother to stone. Later, he fulfilled the prophecy by accidentally killing his grandfather Acrisius with a discus during athletic games. Unable to rule in Argos due to the guilt of even accidentally killing his grandfather, Perseus exchanged the kingdom with another king and founded Mycenae. Perseus and Andromeda lived happily and had many children who would become founders of important lineages. After their death, they were placed among the stars as constellations. The story of Perseus, with its elements of miraculous birth, impossible quest, divine intervention, rescue of a princess, and ultimate victory, served as a model for later heroic myths. Heracles, known as Hercules in Roman mythology, was the greatest of the Greek heroes and the son of Zeus and the mortal woman Alcmene. Zeus had visited him disguised as Alcmene's husband, Amphitryon. When Heracles and his twin brother Iphicles, the son of the real Amphitryon, were infants, Hera sent snakes to kill Heracles, but the baby demonstrated his superhuman strength by strangling them. As Heracles grew, he became the strongest man in the world and a great warrior, but Hera continued to torment him, and when Heracles married and had children, Hera drove him to madness, causing him to kill his wife and children. When Heracles regained his sanity and realized the consequences of his actions, he was overwhelmed with guilt and consulted the oracle at Delphi to learn how he could atone for his crime. The oracle told him to serve King Eurystheus of Tiryns for 12 years and to perform all the tasks Eurystheus assigned him. If he successfully completed them, he would be purified and become immortal. Eurystheus gave Heracles 12 tasks intended to be impossible, which would take him throughout the Greek world and beyond. Heracles' 12 tasks were: first, to kill the Nemean lion, whose skin could not be pierced by any weapon, Heracles accomplished this by strangling the lion and wearing its skin as armor. Second, to kill the Lernaean Hydra, a multi-headed serpent that grew 2 more heads for every head cut off. Heracles, with the help of his nephew Iolaus, killed this serpent by cauterizing each neck cut to prevent it from growing back. Third, to capture the Ceryneian stag, Artemis's sacred golden stag. It took Heracles a year to track it down and capture it without harming it. Fourth, to capture the Erymanthian boar alive, which Heracles chased into deep snow and captured in a net. Fifth, to clean the Augean stables in a single day, which housed thousands of cattle and had not been cleaned for years, which Heracles accomplished by diverting rivers to wash through the stables. Sixth, to drive away the Stymphalian birds, which were man-eating birds with bronze beaks and metallic feathers, which Heracles scared from their roost with a rattle made by Hephaestus, and then shot many with arrows. Seventh, to capture the Cretan bull, which was a magnificent bull that was terrorizing Crete, which Heracles captured and brought back alive. Eighth, to steal the mares of Diomedes, which were man-eating horses, which Heracles captured and tamed after feeding their master to them. Ninth, to obtain the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons, which Hippolyta was willing to give him, but Hera spread rumors that Heracles meant to kidnap the queen, causing the Amazons to attack, and Heracles to kill Hippolyta and take the girdle. 10th, to obtain the cattle of the monster Geryon, who lived on an island at the edge of the world, which required a long journey and battles with Geryon and other monsters. 11th, to steal the golden apples of the Hesperides, which grew in a garden at the edge of the world, guarded by a dragon and tended by nymphs, which Heracles accomplished with help from Atlas, who held up the sky. 12th, and most difficult to capture, Cerberus, the 3-headed dog who guarded the entrance to the underworld, which required Heracles to descend to the underworld and overpower Cerberus with his bare hands after receiving permission from Hades. Having completed the 12 labors, Heracles was freed from service and purified of his guilt, and he went on to have many other adventures, including participating in the voyage of the Argonauts, rescuing Prometheus from his torment, sacking the city of Troy a generation before the famous Trojan War, and various other exploits. Heracles' death came when his wife Deianira, who had been tricked by the dying centaur Nessus, gave Heracles a robe soaked in what she thought was a love potion, but was actually the centaur's poisoned blood, and when Heracles put on the robe, it caused him unbearable agony. Unable to remove the robe, which had fused to his skin, Heracles built a funeral pyre and had himself burned alive. As he died, his mortal half was consumed, but his divine half ascended to Olympus, where he became a god, and was reconciled with Hera and married to her daughter Hebe, the goddess of youth. Heracles was worshipped as both a hero and a god throughout the Greek world, and his stories exemplify the hero's journey of struggle, redemption, and ultimate glorification. Theseus was the great hero of Athens and the son of Aegeus, king of Athens, or in some versions the son of Poseidon, as there was divine intervention in his conception. Theseus grew up in his mother's city, but when he came of age he learned his father's identity and traveled to Athens to claim his birthright, choosing to travel by the dangerous land route rather than the safe sea route, so he could prove himself by defeating the bandits and monsters along the way. Theseus killed several notorious villains, including Periphetes the club-bearer, Sinis the pine-bender, who tore victims apart by bending pine trees, Siren, who forced travelers to wash his feet and then kicked them off a cliff, Cercion the wrestler, whom Theseus defeated and killed, and Procrustes, who forced travelers to lie on a bed and then stretch them or cut off their legs to make them fit the bed, and Theseus killed him by his own method. When Theseus arrived in Athens, he was recognized by his father, but the sorceress Medea, who was living with Aegeus, tried to poison Theseus out of jealousy. and Theseus exposed the plot, and Medea fled. Theseus' most famous exploit was sailing to Crete as one of the tribute youths who were sent every 9 years to be fed to the Minotaur, which was a monster with a bull's head and human body, kept in a labyrinth beneath the palace of King Minos. The Minotaur was a creature born from a divine curse from Poseidon upon King Minos' household. Theseus volunteered to be one of the victims intending to kill the Minotaur and end the tribute. When he arrived in Crete, Ariadne, the daughter of Minos, fell in love with him and gave him a ball of thread to unwind as he entered the labyrinth so he could find his way back out. Theseus entered the labyrinth, killed the Minotaur, and escaped with Ariadne and the other Athenian youths. On the return voyage, Theseus stopped at the island of Naxos, where he abandoned Ariadne, either because he was ordered to by the god Dionysus, who wanted Ariadne for himself, or because he simply forgot her. Theseus had agreed with his father that if he survived, he would change his ship's sails from black to white on the return voyage, but he forgot to do this, and when Aegeus saw the black sails, he assumed Theseus was dead, and threw himself into the sea, which was thereafter called the Aegean Sea. Theseus became king of Athens and was credited with unifying Attica under Athenian rule and with establishing democratic reforms. His later life included many adventures, including participating in the battle with the Amazons and marrying the Amazon queen, Hippolyta, or in some versions, her sister Antiope, joining the Argonauts, helping Heracles attempting with his friend Pirithous to abduct Persephone from the underworld, which failed with Pirithous being trapped forever, and Theseus being rescued by Heracles and marrying Phaedra, who would fall in love with Theseus's son Hippolytus, leading to tragedy. Theseus's end came when he was pushed off a cliff by King Lycomedes of Skyros, but his heroic reputation remained strong, and he was considered the founder of Athenian greatness and a symbol of Athenian values. Jason was the hero who led the quest for the Golden Fleece, and his story involves one of the most famous assemblages of heroes in Greek mythology. Jason was the son of Aeson, king of Iolcus, but the throne was usurped by Jason's uncle, Peleus, who was warned by an oracle to beware a man wearing one sandal. Jason was raised by the centaur Chiron, and when he came of age, he returned to Iolcus to claim his throne, losing one sandal while helping an old woman who was actually Hera in disguise cross a river. Peleus recognized Jason as the prophesied threat and agreed to give up the throne if Jason brought him the Golden Fleece. This was the fleece of a golden ram that hung in a sacred grove in Colchis at the far eastern end of the Black Sea, guarded by a dragon. Jason gathered the greatest heroes of the age to join his quest, and they sailed on the ship Argo, becoming known as the Argonauts. The crew included Heracles, Theseus, Orpheus, the legendary musician, Castor, and Pollux the twins, Atalanta, the huntress, and many others. The journey to Colchis involved many adventures, including stopping at Lemnos, where only women lived, after they had killed all the men, passing through the simple gates, which were the clashing rocks that smashed together crushing ships, but which were navigated successfully with help from the goddess Athena and various other trials. When they reached Colchis, King Aeetes agreed to give Jason the Golden Fleece if Jason could complete seemingly impossible tasks, including yoking fire-breathing bulls, plowing a field, and sowing it with dragon's teeth, which would sprout into armed warriors. The king's daughter, Medea, who was a powerful sorceress, fell in love with Jason through the intervention of Aphrodite and Eros. She helped Jason complete the tasks by giving him ointments to protect him from the bull's fire, and advising him how to defeat the warriors by throwing a stone among them so they would fight each other. After Jason completed the tasks, Aeetes still refused to give up the fleece, so Medea helped Jason steal it by putting the guardian dragon to sleep with her magic. Jason and Medea fled Colchis with the fleece, pursued by Theseus' fleet. To delay pursuit, Medea killed her own brother and scattered his body parts in the sea, forcing her father to stop and collect them for proper burial. The Argonauts returned to Iolcus, where Medea tricked Peleus' daughters into killing their father by telling them she could make him young again if they cut him up and boiled him in a cauldron. They did this, and Peleus died. However, Jason was not able to claim the throne, and he and Medea went into exile, settling in Corinth, where they had children. After years of marriage, Jason decided to divorce Medea to marry Glauce, the daughter of the king of Corinth, for political advantage. Medea, in her rage and betrayal, took terrible vengeance. She sent Glauce a poisoned robe and crown that burned her to death, and then killed her own children by Jason to deprive him of heirs and hurt him most deeply. Medea then escaped in a chariot drawn by dragons, sent by her grandfather, the sun god Helios. Jason's end was inglorious, with one tradition saying he was killed when the rotting stern post of the Argo fell on him as he sat beneath it, remembering his past glory. The story of Jason and the Argonauts presents the hero not as a solitary figure, but as someone who depends on cooperation and leadership. Jason's journey highlights the ancient Greek belief that success alone was not enough, and that character and wisdom were just as important as achievement. Odysseus, the ruler of Ithaca, was remembered not only for his role in the long conflict at Troy, but also for his intelligence, patience, and ability to solve difficult problems. His return journey became one of the most well-known stories of ancient literature, focusing on endurance, learning, and personal growth rather than conquest. Odysseus was respected for his ability to think creatively and adapt to unfamiliar situations. One famous example of this was a symbolic offering left outside the city of Troy, which reflected clever planning rather than force. After the conflict ended, Odysseus began his long journey back to his homeland. Along the way, his travels were delayed by a series of challenges that tested his judgment and resolve. Some lands he visited offered comfort and forgetfulness, tempting travelers to abandon their goals. Odysseus also encountered powerful figures who represented nature, time, and transformation. These encounters often resulted in prolonged stays or unexpected changes, emphasizing themes of patience and self-control. At several points, Odysseus was forced to continue his journey alone, carrying only his determination and hope of returning home. Eventually, Odysseus reached distant shores, where he found kindness and assistance from strangers. With their help, he was finally able to return to Ithaca. Upon his arrival, he chose to remain unnoticed for a time, observing how much had changed during his long absence, including those who believed he would never return. The journey of Odysseus is remembered not for violence or punishment, but as a reflection on resilience, identity, and the long path toward home. Penelope had held them off by saying she would choose a suitor when she finished weaving a shroud for Odysseus' father, and she wove by day and unraveled her work by night, keeping the task forever unfinished. Odysseus revealed himself first to his son Telemachus and his loyal servants, and then he strung his great bow, which none of the suitors could string, and he shot arrows through 12 axe handles, and then he revealed himself, and with Telemachus and his servants, he killed all the suitors in a bloody battle. Odysseus then reunited with Penelope, who tested him by talking about moving their bed, which Odysseus knew could not be moved because he had built it around a living olive tree. And when he explained this, Penelope knew he was truly her husband. Odysseus was reunited with his father and made peace with the families of the slain suitors, and the story ends with Odysseus restored to his kingdom, though later traditions say he was eventually killed by Telegonus, a son born from his time with Circe. The Odyssey represents the hero's journey home and the values of cleverness, endurance, loyalty, and the importance of home and family. As this comprehensive journey through Greek mythology draws to its close after hours of recounting the primordial deities and the Titans and the Olympian gods and the countless heroes whose stories entertained and instructed the ancient Greeks for over 1,000 years, you may find that the accumulation of names and genealogies and adventures has created a pleasant sense of informational saturation, where the specific details of who was the father of whom and which hero killed which monster blur together into a general impression of divine power and human striving, of immortal gods consumed with very human passions and mortal heroes attempting to transcend human limitations through courage and cleverness and strength. These stories that we have explored tonight were not mere entertainment for the ancient Greeks, but were fundamental to their understanding of the world and humanity's place in it, providing explanations for natural phenomena, foundations for religious practice, models of behavior both good and bad, warnings about hubris and the dangers of defying the gods, and expressions of timeless human concerns about love and death and honor and the search for meaning. The gods of Olympus, with their powers and their failings, their interventions in human affairs, and their own complex relationships, and the heroes who sought glory and often found tragedy, these figures populated the Greek imagination and shaped Greek culture in ways that continue to resonate through Western civilization to this day. As you rest now with your mind full of images of Mount Olympus, wreathed in clouds where the gods feasted on ambrosia, and nectar of heroes battling monsters and undertaking impossible quests of temples where sacrifices smoked on altars and priests interpreted divine will, of the intricate web of relationships and conflicts that bound together the divine and human realms in Greek thought. You can let these ancient stories fade gently as you drift towards sleep, their details becoming less distinct, the names and events merging into the misty realm of mythology itself, until nothing remains but the peaceful rest that these tales were meant to facilitate. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. Your support means the world to me and helps the channel grow. See you in the next one.